You know, when I was a kid, I had kingdoms to play in, online and in person, and now kids have real creeps in their literal backyards. Hey y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. Growing up in the early to mid 2000s, I felt that the entire world was made for me. Stores like Limited 2 and Justice let me express myself through zebra-printed fashion choices that I will regret for the rest of my life. The only place comparable to Disney World for me was Toys R Us. I got to spend weekends at the aquarium and Chuck E. Cheese, and online games like Webkinz, Wizard 101, even Club Penguin. They entertained me and introduced me to the internet in a safe way that let me engage with other people my age. And these days, with the advent of TikTok, obnoxious YouTube personalities, the likes of which I wouldn't know, wannabe Instagram influencers yelling into their ring lights, and the closures of stores like Toys R Us and other brick and mortar toy shops, kids these days, literally and figuratively, have nowhere to be kids. When I was really little, we had one giant computer in the living room that nobody really used, and I didn't understand the internet. But around the mid-2000s, nearing 2010, the internet exploded with kid-friendly spaces and games. Online worlds like Club Penguin, Toontown, Webkinz, Wizard 101, they were for kids, and they were designed to be fun, creative, they were supposed to allow kids to explore, and above all, they were safe. They were heavily moderated. So they gave kids independence with a just for us environment, but it was also very safe because they were filtered and they were protected. These online spaces, in the new birth of the digital world, really encouraged kids to get out there and socialize and be creative and use their imagination and play games and all that good stuff, while still being able to stay safe and, you know, not accepting candy from strangers with vans. And it wasn't just the digital world. In the 2000s, kids had physical spaces that were made for them. I grew up and loved going to shops like Limited 2 and Justice, which were obnoxious neon glitter-covered shops that were meant for girls so that we could be ourselves and express ourselves in the most obnoxious ways possible and hopefully get it out of our systems and grow into normal functioning human beings. That did not work out that well for all of us. Toy shops like Toys R Us were for kids a trip to the hidden kingdom or some shit. There were blue shelves and pink shelves covered in dolls and action figures and toy cars and bicycles and video games and Legos and anything you could possibly imagine and eventually beg your parents for. Even places like Chuck E. Cheese and, to a lesser extent because it is a little more adult, Dave & Buster's, I remember so many weekends running around with a cup full of tokens, looking to get tickets, having cheap pizza, and just playing games either with my parents or with friends. I mean, that's what it was all about. None of these places were cool to adults. They were made for kids. Yeah, parents would get dragged to them, but they were very much targeting children. And these spaces didn't just target children, they actually validated the experience of being a kid, as opposed to telling kids, grow up faster, you're getting on everybody's nerves, which is kind of the society we live in today. By the mid-2010s, we started seeing kid-friendly spaces take a huge decline, both in the digital space and in physical spaces. Club Penguin was officially shut down in 2017. Stores like Limited 2, Justice, and Toys R Us all went bankrupt and had to shutter all their locations. And today, most kids' platforms are brainless corporate cash grabs full of microtransactions. Here's looking at you, Roblox and Fortnite. See, after the mid-2010s, things became family-friendly, but not kid-centric. There is a huge difference between you can bring your kids here because we're not going to be showing any titties, versus like you should bring your kids here because we've got tons of games and things that entertain them and bright colors and fun. Stores and online spaces market to everybody, but nobody's marketing directly to kids anymore. And that, believe it or not, kind of left a power vacuum because nobody was specifically speaking to these kids. And then comes probably the biggest blessing and the curse that any of us have, the rise of social media. Platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram all moved in to fill that void. And the problem is that these spaces aren't for kids. A lot of the content is made by people that are just chasing clout, and they're willing to use controversy, shock value, inappropriate content, weird humor, all sorts of things to get clicks from your children. I grew up building bedrooms for little virtual animals in Webkins. That was what I did on a daily basis, and these days kids are looking at TikTok and engaging in weird challenges and trying to be more adult than they need to be. I mean, there's a problem with that, right? Besides bankruptcy, why did we lose these childhood spaces? The whole thing comes from the internet's shift away from smaller spaces towards mega platforms like Facebook, like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. The companies stopped focusing on kid-focused creativity, and instead they started chasing adult dollars. And so this void where there's no online spaces for kids, no physical spaces for kids, there's no thing that says, come be a kid here, you're doing the right thing, you're at the right phase of your life. It creates this cringe culture where now children feel self-conscious about their own childishness. Because now if you're being a kid, well, you're being cringe, you're embarrassing. Nobody else is doing that. Grow up. Kids themselves start abandoning what childish spaces there are left because they're afraid of being labeled cringe and being made fun of and being treated like babies by their friends, because little kids suck. They love being mean to each other. And I think that is so sad. Call it my own delusion, but I grew up with zero sense of what was cringe or not. As a child, I had no shame. I mean, I was probably always cringe, but you know what it was? It was childhood. It was me expressing myself. It was me being a kid. And I never worried about whether or not I was being cringe or embarrassing because there were places for me to be a kid. And I relished and enjoyed my childhood. And these days, kids aren't looking at themselves because there isn't a place for them to be themselves. They need to look outward. What is everybody else doing? And that's where the really, really big problem comes in. Kids now idolize influencers and viral internet personalities because that is the dominant culture that they are being exposed to. And yeah, on the one hand, social media creates dangerously parasocial relationships with influencers. A lot of kids are gonna have a hard time separating the fact that whatever Instagram model or influencer they've been following for years doesn't actually know who they are. The parasocial relationship aspect is one thing, and I don't even think it's the biggest problem here. The biggest problem here is that, how do I put this delicately, because technically I am a social media personality and influencer. A lot of them are assholes. Genuinely assholes. Clout is currency, and the way that people get paid is by being the biggest, most obnoxious, over the top. I did this, I threw a soda in somebody's face, I did this obnoxious thing, I acted like a dick in public. People play pranks, people do all kinds of ridiculous things to get attention. Those viral moments are usually never heartwarming, beautiful things. They're usually somebody being an obnoxious head. And so the problem, when the kids are just watching the obnoxious heads get millions of views and thousands of likes and all this is that they go, I need that clout. I'm gonna grow up to be just like him so people will like me, because that's what they see, that's what they idolize, that's what they see gets the attention. And if your kids are learning from these influencers, God help us all. They don't have any spaces that encourage them to like play and imagine anything. It's all performative. So then they decide, I'm gonna perform, and 9 times out of 10, they're not performing like Vivaldi because they're viola prodigies, they're just doing stupid shit. We have stopped making things for children. Everything is either hyper commercialized, hyper adult, or a blend of both. And so kids are pressured to grow up early because there's no space encouraging them to enjoy childhood, to be themselves. There's no one telling them, you're okay being cringe and goofy and having fun right where you're at. Draw, put stickers on everything, learn to play the recorder. I had to do that in elementary school, and it inspired me to play the saxophone. They're not being told any of this. And so they're just trying to be adults before their time. Right now, fashion, trends, and online behavior are all skewing older, and we see kids at like 8 or 9 basically acting like 18-year-olds. Like I said, there's no safe environment for them to be silly. There's no cringe buffer for them to go be cringe, because they're just gonna go be cringe on Instagram, and some 40-year-old asshole in a basement is gonna tell them something mean, and there goes that kid's entire creative streak, because he just got shit on by some rando on the internet. There's no safe place for them to just experiment. You see little kids on TikTok trying to mimic adult behavior. Brands marketing aesthetic lifestyles to 9-year-olds. I didn't know what a aesthetic lifestyle was when I was 9. I just really liked animals and drawing and making bracelets and My Little Pony shirts and shit. And there's a darker side to this that I would say is the worst part of the entire issue. And it's not about kids growing up too fast or not getting to be cringe. I think that sucks as it is. But the fact of the matter is that when there's no space for kids to be safe and be themselves among other people their age, it leads to them being really easily corrupted and manipulated by other parties. When every space is public, unmoderated, and basically created for adult engagement, kids are incredibly easy to corrupt. Without the kid-focused platforms I mentioned earlier, like Wizard 101, Club Penguin, all that shit, then kids are drawn into those adult spaces and behaviors. And they get exposed to trends, they get exposed to adult behavior, adult content, all sorts of things before they're ready. And that means that a lot of kids are asking questions way before they should ever even think of those things. And they're having them answered by people that are not their parents. Ideas are being put in their heads. They are being shown things that they should not see. At the end of the day, there are a lot of things that are going to be natural and shouldn't be so heavily censored, but there are a lot of subjects and topics and things that children of certain ages don't need to think about. Again, I am so grateful for the childhood that I had because I've always had adults who communicated very clearly to me. And if I had questions, they were answered carefully, but respectfully, and I wasn't lied to. But I'll tell you that a lot of those curious questions that parents dread having to answer for their kids, I didn't have them until years later. I enjoyed a childhood that was safe and censored and coddled and gentle. And a lot of people in online spaces don't give a shit about the safety of children in those spaces, and they can and will post and say anything, and kids are having free reign all over the internet and being influenced by the wrong things. I'm sure you're already thinking about a number of reasons why this matters, but it really matters. A place like Club Penguin, for instance, wasn't just a game. It was a place to have fun and be weird and enjoy yourself and make friends without the person on the screen at the end eventually telling you to like, subscribe, and buy my new product that's out at Walmart. You look at places like Club Penguin and Webkinz that encouraged kids to talk and make friends and interact with each other, but it was filtered and it was safe, and people couldn't say nasty things to each other and use curse words and insult each other. Now you look at kids lurking in comment sections on YouTube and TikTok, and we know what comment sections in these places look like. They're war zones. I wouldn't want to be there. It would probably make me cry when I was like 10. I was a very sensitive kid, and there's a lot of very sensitive kids with no places to go be sensitive kids. Childhood needs protected spaces for imagination. Childhood does not need exposure to adult content and influencer culture. And the cultural gap here is only going to make the subject of mental health even more challenging, because when kids are getting online increasingly younger, before they really have a chance to develop their minds and build thicker skins or what have you, they're being exposed to online bullying, online cruelty, harassment. They're being exposed to all sorts of ideas. The gymfluencers that have had BBLs and a ton of plastic surgery but claim, hey, if you just don't eat for 3 weeks, you'll look just like me. It's doing horrible things to the minds of people that are grown up and have all their mind developed enough, and it still makes people miserable. Imagine kids that can't contend with these things, that don't have the logic to be able to go, yeah, this is a curated image of somebody that's basically not even real. No, they are literally being poisoned. So many aspects of social media are basically made to keep you addicted and scrolling as an adult. What do you think that does to a kid's mind? This lack of safe spaces for kids is only contributing to a growing mental health issue. Again, I know I sound like a broken record. I enjoyed my childhood. It wasn't perfect. I don't think anybody's childhood is perfect. My parents divorced when I was very young, and that really created a lot of problems for me as a kid. But there were so many spaces for me to enjoy childhood. I was taken to so many fun things. I engaged with people my age in safe spaces. and I really got to enjoy being a kid for as long as possible. I think I played with dolls and played my little online games until the age of like 14 or 15. I grew out of them naturally. I didn't stop playing with these things because somebody called me a dork on the internet, which probably would have happened. I get worse to this day, it doesn't matter. But I enjoyed it while I had it. I sat in that time and I enjoyed it. And I miss that. I miss when childhood was spoken about and treated like something that we were meant to really enjoy, not something that we were meant to skip through because there's something inherently wrong or embarrassing about it. I don't know that we'll ever get back to the time period that I kind of grew up in, but being that there's so much availability of online now and there's so many different things that people can create and do, I hope that we'll eventually get back to a time where kids have their own spaces to be kids, because at the end of the day, kids deserve places built on wonder, not places built to get clout. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, be sure to check me out on Instagram. And if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and cosplay content. I'll add links to all of those in the description below. And let me know your favorite space, online or physical, to enjoy your childhood in the comments below.